spoiler alert, nothing's happened since the last time we talked. Not at least to the Cardinals anyways, but that doesn't mean that we're not chock full of things to talk about. Familiar faces, players that haven't signed elsewhere that did play with the Arizona Cardinals last year. And do you trust Steve Keim? Alex Clancy, Bo Brack, Locked On Cardinals. Giddy up!
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome. Alex Clancy, Bo Brack, Locked On Cardinals. Follow him at Bob Brack. Follow me at Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen each and every day, free and available on all platforms. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, etc. Bigger and better. Things are constantly getting bigger as the Cardinals try to form their raw lump of dough into what the 2022 organization is going to look like. Brought some familiar faces back a couple days ago. Zach Ertz, James Conner, Dennis Gardeck, Michael Dogbe, etc. But that's about it. There was a restructure earlier, yesterday. DeAndre Hopkins freeing up some space. What does that mean? But there are a couple familiar faces from years past, one of whom doesn't seem to be the biggest fan of Steve Keim and the Arizona Cardinals, and the other was undervalued before being let walk. We'll talk about both of them, see if there's a chance that either or both of them will end up in Arizona Cardinals red come 2022. Do you trust Steve Keim? Twitter split. Twitter is absolutely split on if you trust Steve Keim. We'll end the show with that. But first, Chandler Jones doesn't have a job yet, Bo. And I know that we're 48 hours in. I know that what happens in the beginning isn't always the telltale sign for what will happen throughout free agency or really have any sort of tea leaves to read. But there are a lot of teams. Jacksonville's a big one that's just started throwing money, just abusing their bank account, throwing money. Christian Kirk, etc. over there. Percentage right now from what we've seen with Randy Gregory signing with Denver, with Von Miller, linked to Dallas as taking Randy Gregory's place there. Percentage right now on Wednesday, March 23rd, that Chandler Jones wears 55 for the Cardinals next season.
5%?
Is that up or down from what it was before? Or is it the same?
Yeah, maybe it's up from 3%. I don't know. I just think that there's a ton of cap space available for some teams that will be able to have the luxury of spending on Chandler Jones, even if his number comes down further and further. I just don't think that the Arizona Cardinals are going to be in play for Chandler Jones. But, crazier things have happened. They absolutely do need to address the edge rush position because you don't want to go into the 2022 regular season with Devon Kennard as one of your starters. He's a better role fit. But I just don't see that this ends with Chandler Jones finishing his career as an Arizona Cardinal. I just think that there are a ton of just teams that have enough money to give Chandler Jones the guaranteed dollars he wants to kind of secure the bag one last time.
Sure. And I think that I agree with that. I mean, I would say it's a little bit higher. I'd say maybe 15 or 20%, which obviously is an overwhelming underdog. But I feel like if the money isn't big enough elsewhere, he may turn around and resign. Like, I don't think it's absolutely insane to think. Like I did when the season ended, especially because he requested a trade a while back. But if the money's not there, or if it's less money to go play for a good team, if it's more money to play for a bad team, less money to play for a good team, and the Cardinals are in the middle, I feel like you'd have a real chance of Chandler Jones coming back, playing the guitar after sacks for the Cardinals.
You just don't feel like the Cardinals burned any bridges. It was just business. It was business. Yeah, and as far as what he knows and where he's spent his last couple of seasons and where he's thrived since 2016, sure. I mean, I guess it's not that crazy. We've seen guys market value plummet at this time because the cap dollars, they quickly dry up. But I just see some teams, maybe Indy, maybe even Seattle, who have just been just crushed by Chandler Jones over the years. Maybe they'll throw a couple extra $1 million at him just to make sure he's not playing him twice a year again.
Yeah, I mean, would you rather play for Seattle for, 3-year 30 with 20 guaranteed, or the Cardinals 2-year 20 with 15 guaranteed? It'd probably be a little more than that if he comes back for the Cardinals. But Seattle's going to be a dumpster fire. Like, do you want to play for a team like that? Do you want to play for Indy, who has no quarterback? Like, these are things that the Cardinals are probably, regardless of how they ended last year, if they have the current roster they have now, they add, say they added Jamison Crowder or something, okay, and say they draft B- Lee, you still have an outside shot to be a 5 or 6 seed next year with who they have.
Yeah.
So that is a playoff team, the defense, where you are going to be a star. It doesn't matter how you perform, how the fans irrationally say that, even though we've said at times that he disappears at times, but opposing offenses need to game plan for him. And that's why, he kind of goes away. So if he's not on the roster, that's a detriment to the Cardinals, and he'd still be a star if he came back. Right. So, I feel like it's more warm here than what we've seen this offseason. It wasn't a messy breakup. It was just this isn't working, is it?
Right. Well, I mean, it's like you're watching a game where the team with the more talent on the roster is losing, but at the last second they can pull it all together and rally past you, and that's what the teams with cap space can certainly do. We'll just see, if they want to do it with Chandler Jones. Look, the Arizona Cardinals aren't the only team that are weary of a guy at his age and giving him a ton of guaranteed dollars, but that a team that's going to be built to win, and they're a pass rusher away, and they have some cash to spend, but Chandler Jones is the perfect fit for whatever that team may be. And I think that, you could probably take Seattle out of the equation, because why would Chandler Jones, it would take an absurd amount of money. I don't think Seattle's trending that direction as far as roster-wise. Deshaun Watson's already saying thanks, but no thanks. They're going to have a tough time finding a guy that can play the quarterback position for them to get back into contention as early as next year. So you're right, probably not Seattle. But, we'll see. I mean, it has a lot of things have to continue to break the Cardinals' direction to have a reunion with Chandler Jones.
Yeah, and again, it probably won't happen. I mean, this is just speculation that I thought that he was going to get picked up day one. It's just a guy, he's still on the list. We've seen a lot of offensive linemen go either be traded. Shaq Mason was traded for a 5th-round pick yesterday, to take place for one of their linemen in Tampa Bay that is no longer there. Ali Marpet, and when you have a lot of movement, a lot of big money getting thrown around, and Chandler Jones isn't at the forefront. He's not 50, and I feel like his name recognition alone. Calais Campbell got swooped up almost right away, didn't he?
Yeah, he was 30 though. I mean, there's a difference, and like Von Miller is probably the guy that people are waiting to see where he goes before Chandler Jones goes anywhere. I mean, there's a couple wide receivers and edge rushers that their markets haven't developed as quickly as some of those bigger name free agents were. Kind of had that materialize for them early this tampering period. So things start to become official today. Teams will have a real good sense of what their cap number looks like, and you expect Chandler Jones to go soon. And I am pretty skeptical that the Arizona Cardinals can get back into that negotiation.
Yeah, and that's fair. But I think it was something that, because he hasn't been signed yet, it was necessary to talk about at least. Yeah. Alex Clancy, Bo Brack, Locked On Cardinals. Follow him at Bo Brack. Follow me at Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Calais Campbell and Tyrann Mathieu, both of whom no longer have a team. Would it behoove the Cardinals to bring one, both, or neither back? Steve Keim didn't do anything yesterday. We got to find something to talk about. Alex Clancy, Bo Brack, Locked On Cardinals. That is next. What's right now, though, is Built Bar. Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar on the planet. Okay. There's a couple different things that you can ingest via Built Bar. One, traditional Built Bars, they've got all the flavors: coconut almond, orange at times, raspberry at times. Like, their flavors are ever changing. They're all covered in chocolate. They've all got around 17 grams of protein, less than 4 grams of sugar. Like, they're absolutely what you need for something that's delicious, that won't break the sugar or calorie or carb bank. 130 calories, 4 net carbs, That's pretty much where you're going to live with Built Bar. The Puffs, though, they are protein-infused marshmallow that are covered in chocolate, and they're still good for you. Doesn't make any sense. Built Bar does all the work for you. Okay, so instead of candy bars or protein bars that taste like chalk or the side of a wall, stick with Built Bar. All right, again, all covered in 100% real chocolate, low calorie, high protein. Replace your candy bars with these. They're better. They just taste better. A typical candy bar can be anywhere from 200 to 300 calories. As I mentioned before, 130 calories a Built Bar, around 17 grams of protein. Can't beat it. Go to built.com. Use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. I mean, the Chandler Jones situation is weird. It's just weird. I don't know. Maybe I'm just jumping the gun because 48 hours isn't long enough to really see what transpires, but I feel like his name was big enough. Alex Clancy, Bo Brack, Locked on Cardinals. Thank you for making Locked on Cardinals your first listen each and every day. Make sure you're following Locked on NFL every day. I do the one on Thursdays. Bo does the one on Mondays. Locked on experts covering the biggest stories around the NFL every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available on all platforms, just like Locked on Cardinals. So there's a couple names who were, beloved here in Phoenix for years. Tyrann Mathieu after the weed stuff at LSU, which seems so weird now after, years that have gone by. He dropped to the middle rounds. Steve Keim took a chance on him, then gave him a lot of money. He was injured twice when he was an Arizona Cardinal, and then he went to Houston, got a 1-year, $8 million deal, and then has been with Kansas City the last 3 years, and he was the heart and soul of that defense, still a turnover creator extraordinaire. He is no longer with the Kansas City Chiefs. Calais Campbell no longer with the Baltimore Ravens at his advanced, let's say at age, I think he's 36 now. Bo, would it benefit the Cardinals to bring back either or both of these guys, even though what we've seen from Tyrann Mathieu is he wasn't the happiest with Steve Keim and Michael Bidwell after they asked him to restructure? We've talked about that every so often.
Yeah, and I tweeted something out about Steve Keim and his inability to draft wide receivers, and Tyrann Mathieu had responded to one of my tweets, like randomly. And he said, I've got it up here, he said, quote, he wanted me to take a pay cut. Maybe he should take one and invest in an advisor, real football guy, in all caps, kind of like sarcastically saying that. I don't think that that's going to be something that they can hash out. And you're like, well, where would Tyrann Mathieu fit into this defense? He could play slot corner. He could play nickel. He could play, you could have a defense where you've got Jalen Thompson, Budda Baker, and Tyrann Mathieu out on the field at the same time. And you'd be a pretty good defense for it, even though Tyrann Mathieu has taken, I think a little step back at his 29 years old. I think Calais is the most likely option here. I know he's 35. He was still solid against the run. He was still had a solid pass rush grade. Calais Campbell fits a lot of where the Arizona Cardinals need fixing. And I'd love to see Calais come back. What he brings to the locker room to finish where he started would be fantastic. I know he said he would like to return to Baltimore, but if it's both or none, yeah, sign them both. If you can get them at the right number, it kind of fits where Steve Keim has been hitting free agents the last couple of years, 30 or close to 30 vets, guys who still have a little bit left in the tank on a short 1-2 year deal. Get it done, and I think you're going to be better for it. But we'll see. I think it's pretty unrealistic with Tyrann Mathieu. I hate to poo-poo everything today.
Mm-hmm. No, and I agree. I mean, I just think these are boxes that need to be checked on our end because they're familiar names. And, Chandler Jones, obviously more familiar as of late. Another former Arizona Cardinal just found a home. Jordan Hicks is going to be the second veteran from the Arizona Cardinals to travel to Minnesota and play for Luke Braun's Minnesota Vikings. Good for him. Everybody says good for him. Yeah, good for him. I still think I know the cap hit was there. And I just feel like this was a lost opportunity to keep Jordan Hicks on the roster. This whole thing about, Zaven Collins and Isaiah Simmons need to play, I think they need to earn it. Isaiah Simmons earned it. Zaven Collins hasn't. And Vance Joseph gets all this flack for not playing rookies. What if they're not ready? That's one thing that I was pounding the table for, and I know Jordan Hicks is older, and I know at some point you got to take the water wings off and just throw them in the water and see if they can swim, with the rookie, especially with Zaven Collins. But I don't know. I just hope this doesn't nip the Cardinals in the bud, especially with how he's just a fundamental piece of this defense for the last handful of years, even though his performance had dropped off.
He was an Iron Man. I mean, he played every single game for the Arizona Cardinals over the last 3 seasons. But look, it was easy. You're not going to be nipped in the bud for not bringing back Jordan Hicks, but you might be nipped in the butt because Zaven Collins wasn't ready. I mean, that's the only. You can find depth at the linebacker position, whether it's through another free agent who probably would cost less than Jordan Hicks, who I wouldn't imagine is a big cap number for the Vikings. But it was just time. It just made too much sense to part ways with Jordan Hicks. And it's just like the business side, you can get lost in it and you can be romantic about, players and how, they should deserve to be, dealt with. And it was unfortunate for Jordan Hicks. But look, the Arizona Cardinals are trying to continue to navigate with Kyler Murray on this rookie scale contract while he's there. And he became a casualty of that. And that's, whatever. I mean, it was just a move to make, and good luck in Minnesota. I think that's going to be a defense that continues to be reworked. I hope that the Arizona Cardinals check in on former Viking Mike Pierce, big run stuffer, played for the Baltimore Ravens at a high level for a long time. They, according to Ian Rappaport, were going to release Pierce, who showed up in a big way in that game against the Cardinals in week 2. But yeah, it's like Hicks is like, hey, thank you for your service. Good luck.
Yeah. And I feel like that's just way too common here. I feel like that's way too common with the Cardinals, and you have guys that go make impacts elsewhere. Patrick Peterson, if Patrick Peterson ends up an Arizona Cardinal, Bo's going to shave his head. He already told me. He already told me off air. It's true. I'll run the tape back.
Yeah.
And, it's not so much, it's not even the devil, because the devil, means that there's an issue. I just don't know if I trust Steve Keim to replace a foundational piece like him.
I don't view him as foundational.
Well, maybe foundational is the wrong word. A guy like just exactly what Jordan Hicks was for this organization. A stable Iron Man, as you mentioned, guy that can teach younger players. And I don't know. I think the Cardinals are going to severely miss a guy that was told, hey, you're not getting the starting nod this year coming up. You can request a trade, and decides to come back, play every down, and just be a professional. Like
I would much rather see Zaven Collins.
Well, yeah, obviously,
I just want to see that, and I think that there's a strong possibility of that. Like, if you look at Steve Keim, first and second rounders, like their first year is a redshirt year, and then the next year they tend to take a step in the right direction. And hopefully Zaven Collins, I mean, he has the ability to do so. Hopefully with a full off season as a pro, this is a guy that can take a step in the right direction for the Cardinals. And the only way to do that is seeing significant snaps in 2022.
Another DB off the board. Desmond King signed yesterday, 2 years, $7 million, to go to Houston, $3.5 million guaranteed. Those are the deals that Steve Keim needs to be making. Do you trust him moving forward? And I will not let either Bo or myself in this next segment say, you have to. We're going to take that away. It's going to be polarizing, yes or no, because what it seems to shape up to look like now is Steve Keim is patting himself on the back from his signings last year and completely overlooking the other holes on the roster, still not having signed one other player from a different team, not named the Arizona Cardinals, up to this point. Alex, Clancy, Bo Brack, do you trust Steve Keim? We're going to play the game show that everybody loves coming up. All right, final segment here. Like, when I saw that Jackrabbit Jenkins would no longer be employed by the Tennessee Titans, I'm like, he's going to be an Arizona Cardinal. 33 years old. I'm like, that's perfect. It's exactly what Steve Keim does. Follow him at Bob Brack. Follow me at Clancy's Corner. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel and subscribe wherever you get your podcast, free and available on all platforms. No paywalls here, baby. Stephon Gilmore is still out there. J.C. Jackson is going to be a rich man in Los Angeles, signing with the Chargers. I see a lot of people on Twitter saying, oh, where's the salary cap going to come from? Oh, where's it going to come from? Stop worrying about that. Everything is possible. Everything is possible. Okay? Kyler Murray's not making $45 million a year yet. So everything is possible. And when you have DeAndre Hopkins, who we talked about earlier, freeing up an extra $7 million with his restructuring of his contract, like he said he was going to, it gives even more room. All in all, safety, or cornerback, linebacker, pass rusher, interior defensive line, wide receiver, offensive line. So 5 of the positions on an NFL roster still haven't been, given any attention to yet. Mm-hmm. Do you trust Steve Keim to put a roster together that's not a bunch of one-year deals and add some stability to this team moving forward? Let's say for the next 3 seasons, because that was the amount of years, the full amount of years that James Conner and Zach Ertz got.
My God, there's a ton of qualifiers in there. Do I trust Steve Keim the rest of free agency? I think that's just the question. And to take the Arizona Cardinals from an 11-win team and one and done in the playoffs to put them in a position to get back to where at least they finished last season. Yeah, I think he has the ability to it. I think that there's going to be enough talent left. You talk about the positions of need that the Arizona Cardinals still have remaining, 2 days into tampering and everything, free agency officially opens today. Yeah, they do have some options there in a deep cornerback free agent class and a deep wide receiver class, and also a deep edge rusher class. Yeah, they're not going to get like the marquee names, but they have the ability to add. Like, that's what they did. They retained some guys that were key to their success in 2021, and now they're going to add to that. The pass rush is going to be huge, but I still think priority number 1 remains the cornerback position. If you can get a guy like Gilmore, it completely kind of changes everybody's perception of this defense.
Yeah, but I mean, wouldn't it be nice to get somebody under the age of 30?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, but unfortunately, drafting well puts you in a position to make those moves. The only team in the league is Jacksonville that's spending as many free agent dollars because they draft worse, surprisingly, than the Arizona Cardinals. You have to grow and develop your guys, but at the same time, with the ability to go out there and do these 1-year deals and create that nest egg for Kyler Murray going forward, that's just key. And that's just what reality is going to be for the Arizona Cardinals. They can't go out there and give these JC Jackson 5 for $82 million deals. They just don't have the cap wherewithal. I don't care if you say it's a myth or not. They just don't have that ability. But they can make these moves that can make them just a little bit better or find the status quo from an 11-win season.
And why don't they have that cap space?
We said it because of their inability to draft, and they have to kind of fix some boo-boos. It's one thing. Like it'd be every show if we were to rehash this. It's trying to be a little bit more forward thinking as far as what they're doing. But I do think that there are the players available through free agency. Is it? What do you wish that he was following what Tom Telesco and the Los Angeles Chargers were doing with their free agent class and how they built around their stud young quarterback? Absolutely. Like, I feel like that's probably a better way to create a sturdier foundation going forward. Justin Herbert, you've got the wide receivers around him. You brought in some good key offensive linemen last year. And then this year you shored up that defense with a couple of the biggest names that were on the market, free agency and trade market. Yeah, absolutely. You'd love to be playing that game, but Steve Keim seems to have his own, strategy hashed out, and you can't say it hasn't worked. But I don't think anybody's denying. I think everybody would be naive or anybody that is denying it, and it would be naive to think that they aren't on thin ice, like that they are, that this can collapse on itself, and that the Arizona Cardinals could easily go from an 11-win team to a 6-win team.
Yeah, I mean,
the good thing is it's just the free agency
early.
Really starts today.
Yeah. No, I get it, and it's not jumping to conclusions by any stretch. It's just the longer it goes on, the more competition there is, the thinner the free agent market is. and the less I trust Steve Keim. Like, it seems like the only thing he had in place early on was to re-sign Zach Ertz and James Conner. So he'll pat himself on the back for what he did last year. Mm-hmm. You know, that he'll pat himself on the back, and that's it. That's what's been done. Okay, they brought back Michael Dogbe, fine. They gave Dennis Gardeck. That seems like a lot of money for what he's done so far.
It does, but continue to look at what the base salary is for this season.
Yeah, sure.
Did you see James Conner's base?
Yeah, what is it? $1 million?
$1.75 million. I mean, as far as you just have to look at those numbers and what the numbers that actually mean it's this year's cap. Mm-hmm. Don't get strung out on next year's cap, or especially the cap after that, because there's some finagling there. Not to say like, hey, this should be like this should be like you're the meme, you're the dog sitting at the table with your cup of coffee saying everything is fine. Like, no, not everything's fine, but you are walking on eggshells, and you are having to be. You have to take like a non-traditional approach to signing players. Like, not all NFL teams traditionally aren't successful bringing in guys over 30, just having a revolving door of 1-2 year deals. So Steve Keim, if that's something that he can kind of carve out his own niche for, good for him. But historically, people haven't been successful doing that. You don't find consistent, sustained success. But the Arizona Cardinals, look, 3 years in a row, they've improved on wins. I think that Steve Keim has shown the ability to find some talent in free agency. He old Steve Keim special back in the day, he'd find it closer to training camp. I don't think you have the luxury of waiting like that any longer, because teams have kind of wisened up. But I think there's enough talent out there, especially at some key positions for the Arizona Cardinals, to improve. And
one last little P's and Q's to mind here. Comp picks came out yesterday as well. The Cardinals have 1 6th round and 2 7th round comp picks.
Yeah. Not as nice as we thought, right? We thought maybe I know things got a little bit. We knew it wasn't going to be a 3rd. We thought it was going to be maybe a 5th, but to get a 6th and 2 7th, like, when was the last time that Steve Keim turned those into anything? Like, the last time maybe Andre Ellington was a 6th round pick. It's just. It's nothing. It does nothing for me. Does it do anything for you?
Well, no, but I mean, Steve Keim has flipped 6th round picks before. I mean, we're seeing like
flip them all.
Yeah.
Don't make a pick after the 4th round.
Yeah. Well, I mean, make a good pick before the 4th round. I'll take that.
Yeah.
I just hope this gets better. I hope we start to see things a little bit sooner, rather than, oh no, they have 7 holes to fill and they only have a certain amount of high draft picks. Hopefully they're not going to rely upon these compensatory 6th round picks to make an impact in the secondary for the 2022 season. Like, and I know we're a month away from the draft. I know that this is early. I know that it's just illegal tampering and the free agency starts. Like, I get that.
How many players, like, talented,
3
notable. Yeah. They 2 to 3. And then you have your draft picks. And then, it's everybody's, probably pretty, at this time we're kind of beaten into Stockholm syndrome, but I think that, anybody hitting the draft, blind squirrel finds in that every once in a while.
Once every 8 years, hopefully, for Steve Keim. I mean, so right now, I know we only got a couple minutes here. The players that they need to sign position-wise before the draft, wide receiver, corner, edge rusher.
Yeah, right? I think, so corner has the priority. I hate corners. I don't care how good you are. I mean, Patrick Surtain is the exception in a lot of the young quarters that pop are, because for every one of those guys, there's 5 duds. Prioritize a free agent corner. You got to get some beef on the defensive line. And then, of course, you either sign a slot or you sign an outside guy. You don't have to do both, because you can find either in the draft. Not in the 1st round, Alex, even though I'm banging the table.
But now it's like, listen, if that's the first, like, if he does his work, if he eats his vegetables in the offseason, have dessert on the first day of the draft. Who cares? Because really, this is the year where if you find somebody that's a big guy that plays on the outside, whether it be an OSU kid or an Alabama kid or a USC kid that Bo loves so much, this is rich at 23. This is the perfect spot to draft a wide receiver. And I trust Steve Keim's ability at this point more to draft a wide receiver than I do to draft anybody that matters on the roster, position-wise. So if you can bring in a corner,
receivers.
What do you say?
He's not very good at drafting.
Well, but the thing is, like, just stick to D1, baby. Yeah. Stick to D1, and we'll be all right. Like, if you can bring in a Stephon Gilmore, fine. At least Byron Murphy doesn't have to play CB1, and you can have Budda Baker. Like, that's a real secondary. The Cardinals didn't have a real secondary last year. Like, Marco Wilson, their fourth-round pick, got hurt, and then everything fell apart. It's ridiculous. Okay, yeah. Linebackers, it's going to be like, well, hope it works. They need an edge rusher or pass rusher. If they don't bring back Chandler Jones, they need a corner, they need a wide receiver, they need a guard, they need another running back. Mm-hmm. You know, they need everything. Yeah. And the Cardinals haven't done anything except for bring back a couple guys that played with them last year at a high level, and then Colt McCoy, who some want to be the starter. Alex Clancy Bo Brack
played at a high level.
He did.
For Colt.
He did.
Yeah,
he did. Alex Clancy Bo Brack, Locked On Cardinals. We'll talk to you tomorrow.